I first would probably tell students who are considering doing research that they definitely should, and that it can never be a bad decision, but that they should definitely pick something that they're really passionate about and excited about. I can't imagine still working on a project that I did just because I was required to do, or one that wasn't genuinely really interesting to me. So to definitely pick something that excites you from right off the bat, and then to be willing to watch it evolve. I know my project has changed a good bit, so both to be excited about it in the beginning and to be willing to let it organically develop.
I would say that if anyone has a question that they're interested in learning more about, whether they think it belongs in a specific research category or not, they should find a faculty member who's also interested in the same things, and they should pursue it further as a research project. Because I think a lot of things that you wouldn't typically place under the umbrella of research actually do belong there, and that a lot of the things that you're curious about, interested in, weirded out by, do merit further consideration, and can be a lot of fun and a lot of can bring you a lot of benefit if you pursue them in an academic setting.
I think, again, because we have this narrative of you work on this project for X amount of time and then you're finished with it, that means that it'll feel finished. And as I've gone through the process, I've really realized that obstacles pop up, or maybe obstacles is the wrong word, but like new challenges, new ways of thinking. So you can't, maybe you set out this research plan, but it's never going to go that way. And that's usually for the best, because you realize that you couldn't have answered this question in the way that you were expecting. So I've liked that element of unpredictability.
In general, with research, I did always have in my mind that it was very much like a science experiment where you do have very distinct steps, and that those types of research experiments might be a little bit more genuine or more, I don't really know how to say it, stronger research. But that really any type of research is true research, and then it can take a lot of different forms, and it's important to do research in a way that does make you excited and that does fit your project specifically.
We designed a questionnaire, administered that questionnaire to over 50 seniors, and then we invited 24 of them back for a one-on-one videotaped interview. So I got to dig my hands in a little bit of everything, really, and during the summer after we had gathered all the data, I did some coding, ran some analysis, and then we started working on our manuscript, and I presented the results at a poster session at the end of the summer. So I did a little bit of everything.
My research is divided into a few parts. So first, I have a textual analysis of one anti-trafficking organization's website. So I did do a rhetorical analysis of the website, examining different aspects and basically focusing on the rhetorical situation as well as some other types of appeals and some other elements, like identification with Burke and just some other things thrown in to see what I necessarily would eventually pull from it. So in addition to the rhetorical analysis of the website, I also had a student component, and within that student component, I did a survey with about 50 students to gain their knowledge on human trafficking. And then I also did Think Aloud protocols, where I used Snagit, a Camtasia software, and went through for about an hour with 5 different students as I navigated the website and had them navigate sort of different pages throughout it based somewhat on my questions and somewhat on what they were just interested in exploring, and then narrate their experience while doing so. And then my final component is actually Fair Girls, the anti-trafficking organization itself. So I will be performing interviews with the organization's leaders as well.
Typically in performing arts research, you would think of the investigation of topics that would inform the production of a piece, some kind of creative work. As a dance major, you'd expect that I would choreograph something perhaps, or dance. But I chose to take a route that's also often done, not so much at Elon, where you sort of use research methods from other disciplines. So I sort of borrowed from ethnography and some philosophical methods as well to sort of create my own methodology that made sense for the questions that I was asking. And that was part of what made my research so unique and I think interesting for the honors program and the Lumen Prize, but it's also part of what's made this such a challenge for me is that I'm not just sort of sitting in my own discipline. I have to reach and pull from a lot of other disciplines, and there's a lot that I have to sort of broaden my understanding about in order to successfully complete this project. And I'm still in that process of learning how to actually write for dance, which is a really interesting problem. So it makes the research very interesting to have a lot of methodological options.
So I always knew that I was pretty deadline oriented and I like to plan things out. And my mentor is not that way at all, which is really good because, I'll say, okay, we have this due and this due and this due. And he'll say, okay, yeah, but let's step back and kind of think about how awesome this project is, or let's think about new ways that we can approach these questions. And so that's been a really good mix. So me kind of learning that I do need to, make deadlines for myself and set aside time to do that research, because otherwise it's just sort of like, oh, look, I have homework that's actually due tomorrow, whereas this thesis is due in 2 years. But it's been good to learn that I can do that, but it doesn't mean that I have to sort of ignore all of like the fun or surprising, delightful parts of the project.
I've learned most about myself that I can be very organized at times, that I can be very driven, but that I also need to learn how to put structures in place for myself. And I think throughout this process, I've definitely gotten better at setting my own agendas. And I think that normally in college, all of that's given to you and you follow somebody else's guidelines, but learning that I need structure and that I can be the one that puts that structure in place has definitely been a learning curve, but also a place that I'm glad I ended up at.
Probably the main thing that I've learned about myself is that it's important to be able to ask questions when you don't understand something, or if you think you understand something but you're not sure how to apply it. So I've had to reach out to my mentor and also faculty across campus, and also texts written by people who I've not met yet, to try and answer my questions as best as I can. I think a lot of people think that if they can't do it all by themselves, they don't have any business going about conducting the research. But it's so important and necessary to, draw on other people's expertise.
We do semesterly reflections and, what did you accomplish this semester? And I'll kind of look back at my plan and then think about what I actually did and like, oh, those are not the same at all. But it's not like I didn't do anything. It's just that I couldn't have done that because that wasn't a reasonable expectation for myself. And I like to set those goals pretty high so that I have something to aspire to. But then I think the biggest thing for me has been realizing that it's okay if I don't get here, because if I'm from here to here, that's still really good progress.
What I've learned about the research process is that, it takes time, it takes patience, and you have to do your due diligence. You have to make sure that you're crossing your T's and dotting your I's, because you're working with, in my case, I was working with a group of students, and I certainly don't want them to feel like they're wasting their time by meeting with me. And I think one of the really refreshing things that came out of the research was how many seniors, sat down with us and told us that they were thankful for the experience because we gave them the opportunity to reflect on their experience. So I think when you're completing a research project, you want to make sure you're being, you have some patience and that you're doing your due diligence, but you also want to make sure that you're creating value for the people that you're working with.